Hi guys, welcome to Dog Sunday School. It's the 15th of February today, so it's been a couple of weeks since I've done a video. I've been quite busy, so you'll have to forgive me. I don't think I've been missed though. So what I thought I might do today is it's always been a big thing for me, whether at Dog Sunday School or when I'm working with clients on a one-to-one basis really, to always have time for an open question and answer session really. I've always been very, very open and very approachable, I like to think, to my clients and students in answering any questions they might have. And with that in mind, I think that's what I'm going to do today really. So over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've received a couple of questions. Some of these questions I've received multiple times from different people, some friends and some other colleagues and people I sort of mix with, if you like. And again, I'm maybe going to just restructure these to put them in a way that I can put over to you guys. And then I've got those written down. So if you see me reading my notes, that's what it is. I'm not so much reading the answers because the answers come from here and here. But certainly sometimes I will write down the questions to make sure I cover them and don't divert off too far. So the first question I got really, and I've had this since my last video, if you like, about the importance of teaching a response to name and how that is very, very easy to be devalued and possibly poisoned, is in effect, Mark, what do I recommend in those cases? Well, a little bit like a doctor, really. Prevention is always better than cure. So, generally speaking, and certainly what I do with my own dogs, I recommend really that you have different names for your dog. Um, I tend to have, if you like, formal names that I expect my dog to respond to. And I use those during training scenarios or when I'm giving the dog a clear instruction that I really do need either of my dogs to follow. It doesn't need to be formal in structure, but it's just a formal name. It's a formal attempt to get their attention. So this is why, generally speaking, some of you may have noticed both of my dogs have got, in effect, names which contain two syllables. And this is for a reason. So with Cassie, Cassie, as it sounds, is her formal name. So if I'm giving her an instruction, it is Cassie, sit. Cassie, come. Cassie, leave. Cassie, down. I think you get the idea. And exactly the same with Rolo. But Cassie also has a nickname, which is Cass. So when I'm nattering to my dog, when I'm talking to her like all sort of, owners do really with their pet and companion dogs, when I'm sort of nattering to her or I'm giving her a suggestion or I'm asking her a question, it's Cass. So in every foot, and again, so she knows, well, Dad's making a lot of white noise really, and I don't really need to pay attention to that. And exactly the same with Rolo. So Rolo's nickname, if you like, is Little Fella. Says, go on, little fella. Do you want a treat, little fella? Yeah. So when I'm nattering and stuff like that, I tend to use the nicknames. Now, so prevention, that covers prevention. If you can start like that, and then you see you can that sort of throwaway nickname or that nickname that doesn't matter if you like, that whether it gets tainted, although that's never nice, but certainly if it gets devalued, it doesn't really matter. I've got the formal name, for want of a better term, that I use and nobody else does. So that's the way I would do it from a preventional point of view. But what do we do if we've already devalued it? The answer is quite simple, really. Introduce a different name. Now, some people find this very, very difficult to get their head around, but you've got to remember, you can still think of your dog and feel for your dog under their name that's been poisoned or devalued. I'm not saying you need to permanently change it, because what we're talking about here is just an audible cue or signal or instruction to your dog to pay attention to you. So you can keep the old name, but just don't expect the dog to respond to it from a training point of view reliably. Introduce a different name. Maybe introduce a nickname and use the nickname for that. Yeah. Use your imagination, guys. It's not difficult. You don't need to put obstacles in the way and say, oh, I can't do that. It's very easy to do. And quite simply, well, normally the first thing we do when we bring a new dog into our home, particularly if we've not got it from a puppy, is we change the name anyway. Rolo's name was Patch. For the first 6 months of his life, his name was Patch. And I just renamed him. So it's not difficult to, guys. Just build a positive association with it and then keep that to yourself. Don't let anybody else devalue it and don't poison it. So that's that question done. Okay, so this is a question I've been getting this from several people, really, different trainers and bits and pieces. And it has come up in conversation with some potential new clients and actually people that have become new clients. Is when I launched the new short courses, why did I specifically aim those, at least to begin with, at the introduction of a slip lead or a slip collar? What the question was really, aren't you worried that, the slip lead or the slip collar is sometimes a bit of a contentious piece of equipment, and there's some sort of negative connotations from certain parties from that. And why am I prepared as a trainer to teach people how to use it? Quite simply, because I've got the dog's welfare at heart. People are going to go and buy these tools. There's so much on social media, people are going to go and buy slip leads. They're going to buy head halters. Some of them possibly going to go and buy prong collars. Well, I would much rather, particularly with the slip lead, because that's the tool I use personally myself in a lot of cases, I would much rather, if people are going to introduce these tools, rather than just put the tool on the dog expecting the tool to do the job and maybe get it wrong, potentially actually get it wrong, I would much rather help and support those people in doing what they were going to do anyway. And we can avoid it being a contentious piece of equipment. Yeah? We can avoid that sort of negative side, if you like, that some people want to paint that piece of equipment with. We can simply avoid it. I personally now as well recommend that we use particular pieces of equipment. Some have got built-in safety devices, so if we've got somebody that's a bit heavy-handed. And of course, sometimes I say, no, don't. You're not the right person. You using a slip lead, please don't do that. You haven't got the leash handling skills. You've got possibly too much emotion, or you're expecting the tool to do the job. For whatever reason, it doesn't matter. But of course, there are times when I say, please, we don't need to introduce a slip lead, or certainly with your dog, it's not the right tool, or that you're not the right person, or the combination. Okay, so that's why. It's with the welfare of the animal, the welfare of the dogs in mind, that I'm actually prepared, if people are going to use a slip lead or a slip collar, to teach them what I think is the correct way, introduce it the correct way. So that's it. Okay. Last but not least, I posted up quite a lengthy post about, training my way, if you like, the R.E.S.P.E.C.T way. And it got a few views. Didn't get so many comments, but it got a few views. And a particular friend of mine messaged me and said, Mark, what do you mean when one of the last paragraphs, if you like, and I have mentioned this before, and certainly a lot of my one-to-one clients that I work with that have worked with other trainers or worked using a particular type of training method. And this is something that I have a sort of reoccurring conversation with different people about. It's about the pitfall or a particular pitfall with a certain type of training method. A training method that in actual fact doesn't involve any type of consequence for unwanted behaviour. And we're going to leave it there. But this is a pitfall, unfortunately. Now, I'm sure that top-end trainers, really skilled trainers that possibly practice this type of method, if you like, may well not fall into this pitfall. But those are totally different people than the average pet owner. Okay? This is possibly the problem with the slip plate. Yeah. Not everybody has the skills and the nuance and the finesse sometimes, to do things and not fall into pitfalls or not make mistakes. And this is where I come in. But the particular pitfall I was talking about, and I've had this a lot, I've worked with lots and lots of clients that have been really, really successful in training their dogs what they want their dog to do, using positive reinforcement. They've taught their dogs some basic obedience. Some have taught their dogs some really fancy tricks that I've never taught my dogs. And they look impressive. But on the quiet, a lot of these people are still suffering with unwanted behaviours and with a slightly unbalanced relationship, to put it mildly. And that is because what they've inadvertently done, my apologies, is they've built a transactional relationship with their dog. Because we use positive reinforcement, because we use play, because we use food, because we use affection, and obviously a lot of food and treats, let's be honest about it. We build a relationship which is off tilt. If we're not very, very careful, we build that transactional relationship. Now, I'm certainly not going to try and sit here and tell you all the pitfalls of that. What I want you to do, guys, is I want you to go away and I want you just to research for yourself the pitfalls of transactional relationships. I'm sure some of you will already know what I'm talking about, but this is a real big problem. And it's an easy pitfall to find yourself in when you're literally just copying what someone else is teaching you in a training class, or the particular trainer one-to-one, or off of social media, YouTube, whatever it may be, where you're constantly paying your dog for absolutely everything. And you also make the mistake of distracting with those same types of reward. Yeah. It's a big, big problem. And that's why I just slipped it underneath the fence down in one of the last paragraphs, guys. Okay. So please research that for yourself. What we want to do, we want to build a relationship which is based on collaboration. We're a team. There's something in it for both of us, but sometimes there's not. Sometimes we're doing it because of the relationship. Yeah. Now, I don't really want to go on for too much more, really. This video is already 15 minutes long, so I'm going to leave that with you. My clients will certainly be coached, and we will discuss these things and how to avoid them. And quite often, when clients are having particular behaviour problems, yet their dogs seem to be quite well trained in certain aspects, it's this that's the problem. So that's it, guys. I'm going to leave it there for you. Okay. See you again soon. Bye-bye.